Hey co-wanderers, I'm Leah.
I'm Tay.
And welcome back to our channel, The Wandering Desk, where we talk about self-care,
remote work,
travel,
and the digital nomad lifestyle.
Let's get into episode 2.
If you haven't already since episode 1, be sure to hit like and subscribe to our channel, and also get interactive with us in the comments because we're bouncing around to a couple of different destinations this year, and we want to check out whatever country you think we should be in to work remotely, or whatever country you've been curious about.
You never know. It could be a trip coming soon.
Most of you may have noticed, if you paid close attention to our little episode notes, that it's been a minute since episode 1 of The Wandering Desk.
Yes.
We released it recently in June, but it was originally recorded back in February. So it was on Valentine's Day. It was our Galentine's Day weekend. And we came up with this genius idea, and I say that with a hint of sarcasm, but we came up with this genius idea to combine what was supposed to be our self-love trip with recording episode 1 of The Wandering Desk. So, I mean, obviously, what could be the problem with setting up a trip where we need to go recover and recharge and relax and just add a little bit of pressure, like shooting your first episode of a podcast?
Like, how do you work on the trip where you're not supposed to work? So I think that's a great segue into what this episode is about. And this episode is battling burnout. I think that it's a great segue from the first episode because you guys saw it and we got great feedback, and it was, all praise. But
and thank you so much to everyone who checked it out. Thank you for all the feedback, the critiques, the compliments, all of it. This is a very new journey for us. So
yes,
we appreciate everyone just checking us out.
Yes, we do. But behind the scenes, y'all, looks are deceiving. And I think that the best way to come to you guys and talk about self-care and travel is to be just open about it and say where we were in that moment. So that kind of ties into this episode, which was battling burnout. And you can't see it in the camera, but guys, we were burnt out. And so
maybe you can.
Maybe you can. Tell us in the comments. Can you see it? No, seriously, but that's where the gap comes from. So our first episode, again, like you said, was on Valentine's Day, which was February 14th. And now it is it July 9th?
It is July 9th.
It is now July 9th.
And even just the gap between, filming the first episode and wanting to put the first episode out. Just for some context, we had to record the first episode twice.
Jeez,
we were in a hotel that did not have great Wi-Fi. The reception was just all over the place. And so we were recording to a platform. Long story short, there wasn't great communication between what we were using to record and where the video was supposed to be saved. So ultimately it was just a corrupted file, and we just had an hour-long conversation amongst ourselves.
That was no footage. And I do want to say, which I think this will come full circle later on in the episode, Tay is very determined. She's about her work. We lost the first episode and she wanted to record a whole nother hour episode right after. And we're sitting in front of the camera like, we got it. Okay. And I was like, you know what? No. It's you gotta know when to call it quits. And that was one of those moments where it was like, first of all, we shouldn't even be working on this trip.
Right.
We're supposed to be relaxing.
Because mind you, at this time, the point of this trip, of this Galentine's Day trip that was all about self-care and self-love, was we were going through some, which we talked about in the previous video, we were going through some pretty difficult times in our lives. So a change in a long-term relationship, losing loved ones, mental health and mental wellness being called into question for loved ones. There were just so many big shifts and challenges. So this trip was originally created, or we thought of this trip as an idea to get away and to take a break and escape. And instead we piled a bunch of work into a self-care trip.
Yeah. And I want to say to our setup today, which cheers to us.
Yes.
We decided to relax on this episode because how do you talk about battling burnout if you are just front facing, very strict, very, up there? But it with battling burnout, you have to set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was our biggest thing. I think that's a big thing for a lot of people out there in the workforce, whether you're remote or not. I think that sometimes you don't know when you're burnt out. And that was our issue. We didn't know that we were burnt out while burning ourselves out even more. And Tay and I are alike in the sense that we dive into work head 1st. And that's typically the first sign of burnout or just being exhausted. It's like, why am I going so hard? Why am I in every moment that I have some free time, I think about what I can do at work and not what can I do for myself.
Right.
How can I relax? How can I love on me in this moment to take a step back and say, you know what? I'm not all the way there right now, and work is just going to make it worse. So,
and then what does it even look like to show up to your work as this version of yourself that's not even, when you're not taking care of yourself, you're not showing up as your best to work either. So you're really just doing everyone a disservice. You're not allowing yourself to become better, and then you're also just not showing up as your best, most energized self. So to Leah's point, I was super grateful for her as a partner in this moment because boundaries sounds like such a cool, trendy word. We're always like,
set your
boundaries. Like, my boundary is really that I didn't feel like talking to you today, so I'm going to set boundaries. Like, no.
Right.
It's really a deep, layered conversation with yourself. And for us to go through the amount of work it took to set up this first episode and obviously facing the disappointment of finding out the episode was lost, of all the energy and time and effort that went into setting up this first episode and feeling like it just got thrown out the window when we tried everything did everything in our best power to have this go according to plan, right? There needed to be that boundary that said, you're tired, so take a break. You're not going to, you're frustrated. Do not show up and bring a tired and frustrated version of yourself to this project that means so much to you, that you want to mean so much to other people, and that you want to represent the exact antithesis of coming to do something when you've been depleted of your emotional resources for the day.
Right.
So I was very grateful I had Leah to say, look, girl, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to go upstairs. Okay. We're going to change. We're going to go out, get some food tonight. We're going to step out, have a little New York bop. We're going to have a good time. And then we're going to come back in the morning and we're going to be ready and fresh and recharged. And we're going to do this episode again. And that's exactly what we did. And it was something we were able to enjoy instead of it being us just pulling ourselves through the mud to do this when we just were not feeling connected at that point.
I also want to say, and I'll say this, we'll have more footage from the New York trip coming soon so you guys can see some of the little things we did, but we did record the second episode or the second take of the first episode on the one day that we were supposed to relax. So we had the tipsy scoop. We'll show you guys that in another clip. The spa day, our whole day that was devoted to self-care. The first thing we did is wake up and work. So it's like, how do you devote a day to yourself and then also not set those boundaries? And granted, we did have to redo that episode, but how on a self-care trip? That episode shouldn't even have been for that trip. It should have been way before that or after that. Like, we should have taken that time to really sit and say, okay, let's relax, let's love on ourselves, and then let's come back refreshed and then do it X, Y, and Z. And the first sign probably should have been the Wi-Fi.
Oh, because let me tell you,
the Wi-Fi was so horrible. Like, it was just giving us a run for our money. So I think even just setting boundaries that day, the day after, hell, the day before we got on the plane, we should have been setting these boundaries. But you live and you learn, and that's how, ironically, we get episode 2. And I want to point out that this podcast, this YouTube channel, our business, our brand, is never to show up and say, we're great, we're whatever. We want to dive into the deep things of being vulnerable and telling y'all these things. Like, I think that is the most important thing, to just be real and show you the real of who we are as people and business owners. And this is what we're about. If we say we're about self-care, I'm not just going to show you me sitting in a spa looking good. I might be so out of whack. Like, I just need to tell y'all, hey, I don't know if it's just me or if it's everybody, but let's take a step back together and let's hold off. And
Right.
you're not going to get an episode, or you're not going to get that post, because we are still humans too, just as you are. And that's what we want to show you guys. Like, show up when you are 100% there and you're fully ready to show up. But also, when you show back up, don't just put on that face. Take the mask off and say, hey, this is where I was. This is where I show up today. But let me tell you how I got here. And maybe that'll help you in your journey to get to a better place as well. So definitely setting those boundaries and always being honest and upfront and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not the only person in the world that goes through these things.
Right.
There's other people that goes through these things, but nobody really talks about it. So then it's like you feel like you're in it alone almost. So
And that's so
definitely
not the case.
right.
So not the case. And I would love to know from you, especially because you were dealing with what I think is one of the heaviest things for most of us, which is the loss of a family member.
Yeah.
What do you feel like was your first indication that you had actually done enough to rest and heal in order for you to return to maybe not even just work, but more regularly scheduled programming?
Well, first let me tell you what I didn't do. how it didn't work out.
Okay.
I actually went to New York maybe 2 weeks or a week before we went, and I told no one. I just got on a flight 11 something at night,
Just gone.
just gone. And it was moments like that where I kept feeling like I was running away to do something. Like, I'm just like escaping. And it was just like, okay, even during our trip, it was like, it hadn't even been a full month since I got this news. And I'm like, yeah, self-care, we're great. We're doing all these things. But it wasn't until I think I got back home from both of those trips, and I was just sitting there like, what do I do now? Like,
Right.
not every moment is a bad moment. And I think I take that and run with it. Like, oh, I feel great right now. And so let me just go and go and go and go. And then on a random Thursday, I might be crying because now I'm losing it all over again. So it was kind of the back and forth, the seesaw of emotions. And I was like, you know what? I'm losing myself. I don't even know where I am right now, trying to battle this emotion, trying to battle this information, just the information at hand, and say, I will never see this person again. How do I deal with that? And so my first step was to say, you know what, it's time to go to counseling, because I kept isolating. And then when I would come out, then I'm just dumping on people. Like, so what do you think? What do you think? And it's like, now I'm just battling, like, okay, I get by myself and I feel this way and it's heavy. And then I get with somebody else and then I throw all this other stuff on them. And I'm like, okay, that's balance, that's how we're doing it. But it really wasn't that. It was like, you need to take time for yourself. You need to step back. I want to say thank you to my job as well. They literally took everything off my plate in a day and was just like, go be okay. Like, I want you to be okay, because you can't work and be battling your mindset like that. So they were just like, go be okay. I went and I found me a great counselor. I love her. And it was basically about, how do you show up for yourself? How do you give yourself what you need in those moments? Because I think a lot of the other counseling I had was more so like, what's the issue? Tell me all of your problems. And she was like, you can solve all of your problems yourself if you tell yourself what you need. If you're heavy and you're crying, you need to say, I don't need to be with my friends right now. I need to sit in this moment. And sometimes I do need to be with my friends because I need to be comforted or whatever. But I think also the biggest thing for me was, after coming back from that small break, I started to dive into work, and work was going so well. And I think that was another thing that showed me that I'm burning out, because in the midst of all of this, I got a promotion, we're getting raises and this conversation, and they want you in this room, and I'm like, my efforts are paying off. I'm seeing what I'm doing, but also that's all I can see. That's all I identify as, this employee that is doing great, that's getting these promotions, that's doing this. And I was just so autopilot with the job that I'm like, I'm pouring so much into this. Am I okay? Like, I'm happy for myself and I love the promotion. But at one point, I couldn't even enjoy it because it's
Right.
like when I close that laptop, I sit there and think, I got some more tickets I could probably get into, or I could probably do this training to get ahead, or I could probably do this to. And it's like, when do you get to you? When is
Right.
it your time to say, I'm grieving. Today I'm happy. Today I'm sad. Today I'm just okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it is a flow of emotion. So really just taking the time for myself, going to counseling, and also being able to have a voice in my job and say, today I'm not okay.
Right.
Or, hey, I know this is last minute PTO, but I need it.
Right.
And they respect that. So that was definitely where I had to show up for myself in the burnout.
Do you feel like there was a point in burnout where the struggle was simply identifying that you were in a state of burnout?
Yes, but also I don't think I identified, if that makes sense. Like I didn't identify that I was burning out. I identified as I was a great worker.
Right.
And that's the part that was like,
Which makes sense because it's being, at this time, it's also being rewarded, right? You're receiving
yeah,
a promotion. Things are going well at work. So you're getting the results that you wanted from your career
right.
during a time where you also were habitually kind of, betraying yourself and your needs.
Hmm.
So it's almost like that behavior is being rewarded. So now you're
Yeah.
going to keep repeating it, repeating it, repeating it. So for you, at no point you feel like you never really identified like, oh wow, I'm in a state of burnout and I need to do something. Would you say by the time you reached out to get counseling, were you aware that it was burnout, or were you just like, something's wrong, I don't know what it
Just
is?
something's wrong. I didn't know I was burned out until I got to a healthy space.
Mm.
And that's what made me pick up on the factors to say, okay, if this happens or if I'm showing signs of this, then now I know that I'm burnt out.
And
But
what would you say to the you before, like when you just said
whew,
these signs, right? What are the signs that you feel like you ignored before that let you know now you're like, this is for sure
this
burnout?
is for sure. This is
What
for
is it that you're
sure.
looking at where you're like, now I know
Um,
that's burnout?
when I don't get off at 5, when I don't use my 9 to 5 hours to do my
Mm.
job, and then I wait to do my job from 6 to whatever
Mm.
first. 2, the state of my household. And I say that, but for me, because somebody could come to my house and be like, oh, it looks nice. But I know what my house looks like when I'm just out of it.
When I'm at my
If
best.
there's 10, 20 dishes in the sink, even if it's just forks, I know I could have picked it up and I didn't.
Right.
So that, and then also always, always, always wanted to hang out with a friend.
Mm.
If I start saying yes to every plan that comes my way, I'm probably burnt out. And I'm probably using somebody else to latch on to be like, I'm having fun. It's great. We're having a good time. Those are the 3 key things. Like even just calling a friend too, just always wanting to be on the phone and never being
Right.
able to sit in a moment by myself.
You're using other people to affirm for yourself that you're okay,
Right.
instead of sitting down and really asking yourself, am I okay? What do I look like when I'm okay? And
Right.
does this match with that?
Right. Yeah. So definitely those top 3 things because I probably would have lost it. I'm like, oh, I'm great. Let's hang out. Or oh, it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's just a little dish. I'll get to it eventually. Or oh no, I just didn't do that one thing at work. I just need to just do this so then I can start my next
Mm-hmm.
day just with a clean slate.
Yep.
Well, if you did it yesterday, your slate would have been clean for the next day.
Right.
So it was just a lot of identifying things for myself and picking up on key factors and you know repeated behaviors that I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is not right.
I've seen this before.
This looks familiar, and I'm gonna go ahead and do something about this. Like, let's go for a walk, and I want to say empty scrolling.
Yes.
Empty
Yes.
scrolling
Yes. Yes.
at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. You look up, the
Mm-hmm.
sun is up, you up, and you're like, what did I watch?
Which is one of the nastiest, like, just traps of burnout,
Yes.
because empty scrolling, it's almost like your empty calories of your emotional energy, right? It's like here you are scrolling and you're not gaining anything from it, but yet it's taking energy from you. It consumes energy to scroll. It consumes energy
Yes.
to consume content and make a decision about, am I going to interact with it? How do I want to interact with it? Does that open up the door for now other interactions that are going to
Right.
take my energy and my attention? And it turns into this rabbit hole that is taking energy from you,
Mm.
even though in your mind, because it doesn't take effort, you think you're relaxing, right? Because that's almost the danger of burnout. Is it's sometimes we do identify that we're in it, and we don't really know how to take care of it.
Yeah.
And we really think that a bubble bath was like, if you ask Pinterest,
No,
a
seriously.
bubble bath and some essential oil should
Little
handle,
eucalyptus.
you know, okay, a little soy candle
Okay.
will solve this problem of
No.
burnout. Burnout is
Yeah.
deeper than, we all get tired. We all get frustrated. We all have days where you have to show up even though you might not feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from a pattern, because that's what
Yeah.
what you touched on, right? It's like, I've seen this before. When you make a pattern out of neglecting your own needs because you think it's more important for you to achieve something,
Right.
and now you're not even taking care of yourself,
Oof.
that's when we get into that dangerous burnout category. And then we fall into this trap of, especially if you're like me or you, who tend to put a lot of value in our achievements. We find a lot of pride in working hard, being great at what we do.
Yes.
Our skills mean a lot to us. Our ability to be resourceful means a lot to us. Our ability to be independent women means a lot to us.
Yes.
So it's easy to get so wrapped up in that part that neglecting your needs almost feels like it's a part of the job.
Right.
That's what you're supposed to do.
That's what you're supposed to do. So, into the patterns, because we agreed on the empty scrolling. What patterns did you find? How did you know that you were burnt out? I want to say for the trip specifically, because we do want to touch on that, but just in general, how do you know that you were burned out?
One of my signs is definitely the same as yours. It's looking around and seeing an environment that is reflective of chaos. Because if there's
Yeah.
chaos around me, it usually means there's chaos in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And another place where that shows up that I think sometimes we don't think about is even chaos in um, digital organization, right? Like,
Mm.
do I have, which I'm not going to look right now because I'm sure I would embarrass myself. Like, do I have over 100 unread messages that are just in my phone? Do I have a email inbox that is it just has exploded?
Right.
It's not organized, right? You might not get to every email, but we know there are ways to stay organized with
Yeah.
email.
Create those
So
folders.
is my inbox crazy? Is my, do I have a ton of photos that I don't need that are just kind of like built up? Maybe I do a lot of taking screenshots of things that I want to remember.
Forget about your screenshot.
And then they're just like, why do you have all these screenshots that you didn't reference them? I don't go back to reference them like I should. I don't delete them once I use them or get the information, and it just becomes clutter, right? So the clutter around us, whether it be in our physical spaces or our digital spaces, is often a reflection of where our mentality is at. So for me, that's a big one. When I'm noticing just so much chaos and a lack of organization around me, that's definitely number one. Number two is an inability to follow through.
Mm.
And that's why I think it's so important to talk about this conversation in a way that's not, um, when we say self care, we're not saying that means you don't have to do anything. And it's just about, oh, well, to take care of yourself, you're just going to lay around and do nothing. Like, that's not what self care looks like. It's this taking these proactive steps to make sure that you can be productive and operate and be your best self. So what happens is I tend to neglect my needs until I finally, it's like I'm oblivious that there's a problem.
Okay.
But meanwhile, there's all these little things that are starting to add up. So maybe this part of my work that I know is so important, I always take care of this. I want to make sure a client is taken care of. I'm going to make sure I meet my client meetings. I'm going to make sure their deliverables land on time.
Okay.
I'm going to be in my strategy calls. But that essential backbone of my work, I got that, right? Because that's what lets me say I'm okay. The things are getting done, right?
Just in a robot mode.
But then meanwhile, all these little things that happen in between, organizing that email inbox, studying other marketing campaigns, doing voice of customer research, all these little things that don't necessarily have a consequence if I don't do them.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody's going to know if I do voice of customer research until that next campaign isn't all that successful. But for now, there's no way you would know that I didn't spend my time doing that, right? That I didn't spend time today going through to look at other marketing campaigns that I feel like could apply to my work. Mm-hmm. No one would know. So I don't get in trouble for that. That's just for me. But since it's just for me, I tell myself that I can neglect that. Oh, well, nobody's going to know. No one's going to know about that.
Just a random thought,
Okay.
Not to throw you under the bus or nothing. Wait. Not to throw you under the bus or nothing. But let's talk about that travel schedule, huh? Because you will leave in a heartbeat and not come back. First of all, you're bi-coastal.
I like to identify as bi-coastal. I don't know if I meet all the qualifications, but I like to split my time between East Coast and West Coast for sure. Mm-hmm. But there's definitely a lack of planning. Okay. Ahead, which
because you don't tell me. I was like, hey, Tay, let's go to this nice little cocktail hour, this new restaurant. Oh, girl, I'm in LA. I'm like, when did you leave?
I'm in the Bay.
When did you
leave? Yeah, and I think that speaks to that tendency to just let yourself build up. And then once I finally hit this place, it's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go on a trip. I need a break. It needs to happen right now because I can't make it another day. And I just want to step away. I need to change my environment. Yeah. And I need big change fast. And that's usually where I'll just say, hey, look, I'm going to go on a trip. Fortunately, I have a really great support system of friends who live all over the country and all over the world. So oftentimes I get to stay with amazing friends and amazing people and make myself of use to them as well, which makes it this mutually beneficial relationship, but it is still working. So I'm
gonna get off you.
No, but that's what we need. Come on,
that's what we need.
So yeah, I usually change my environment, but I don't change the behavior. And that's something I know me and you talked about. Our goal with the Wandering Desk was we even noticed a pattern, which I think is also indicative of burnout, where we were doing just that. We were changing the location, but not addressing the issue or the problems that are constant no matter where we are. Avoiding burnout altogether would allow me to be in this place where, one, I can plan travel because travel isn't something that has to be so. It has to happen right now. I'm going to feel I'm going to lose my mind, right? And then there's all this pressure on it. And then also it makes travel this thing that I love, that I've had a chance to, it really stumbled into my life. I really didn't think I was going to be this person who loved to travel so much. I used to be afraid of international travel. It's a whole nother story. Oh, but I was not into it. You could not tell me. It was like, oh, you leaving the country? You about to be kidnapped? Who's about to be ransomed? Who's about to be on a milk carton? Y'all about to call the U.S. Embassy to come get who? Y'all barely got Britney back. Hell no. Hell no.
Hell no.
That was me. Now I'm like, take me everywhere. Stamp my passport.
Really? I didn't know that about you.
Woo. That's a story for another day.
Girl, my first trip, I went with nobody I knew. I was like 14.
I would have been like, you're crazy.
I was. I had a blast.
I would have been like, listen, friend, this is all I have for ransom money. You make sure you negotiate.
$3.
You get the motherfuckers down to $25. That's what we got.
I got you. I really didn't know that. Wow.
But yeah, so it also, now that I do have this relationship with travel that I really love it, I don't want to put it in a position where it has so much pressure on it. It became, I'm traveling because this trip should fix this, Right. And often when we put all that pressure on travel to fix this problem, it just means we're we're running from the problem and
avoidance. That's my biggest thing is avoidance, because I will leave quickly and I will tell no one. You better check my location.
Okay. Because you talk about me, that's exactly how you did that New York trip. I was like, oh, hey, girl, I'm over here shopping. I might need a little piece of something for the trip. It's like, oh, well, I'm in New York already, but don't worry, I'm going to come back and get you and then come back.
Like, that trip was crazy. I literally felt like I became another person for a week. I think I was out there for about a week. And shout out to my sister, because I really tried to sneak off, and she was walking through the airport and was like, oh, hey. And I was like, oh my God. I'm running away right now. Don't tell anybody. Like, no, but I really just became a whole nother person for a week. Like, I was like, okay, this is my life. I live in New York. I live in LA. I mean, not Jesus, LA. I don't know where I live at that point. I live somewhere. No, but I'm like, I live in give me the New York. Why can't I say what I'm trying to think? Manhattan. Okay, Jesus Christ. Okay. I live in Manhattan. I shop down this street, 56 something. I just do these things. I order in. I have Thai in the bed and write in my journal, and
you created a new life.
I created a new life, and then I had to come back, and I was like, oh, I'm still me, and I live in Georgia. With that being said, I feel like that was one of the key things that really made me aware and notice, like, I am burning out slowly. Like, why am I so comfortable creating another life and not dealing with mine? Right. Or why am I so comfortable in these spaces, but not in the spaces that I've already created for myself? So just really getting into that trip was crazy. Yeah.
And avoidance being a sign of burnout. Yes. Like, I think a lot of people wouldn't make that correlation of like, you're avoiding this because you're too tired to deal with it.
And I'm not going to.
But we don't want that. Facing it is what, helps us recover and heal and work through burnout, because like we said, it's about a battle with burnout. With burnout, it's not a destination. It's not something that comes and then once you get through it once, you never have to worry about it again. Burnout is recurring. Yes. So until we face it and you're intentional about facing burnout, about healing through it, and not filling that space with empty scrolling, with libations, with if it's weed, whatever it is that we all have our vices. It could be junk food, maybe over socializing with friends, like you were saying. Like now it's like I'm just constantly going to reach out whenever we're relying on those external factors. Yeah. Because we're just too tired to deal with it. You're probably facing a pretty bad battle with burnout. And to win that battle, you have to rest for your life. Okay? We don't want you fighting for your life, baby.
You should just be living your life, not
fighting. Live it.
So, with that being said, put in the comments, what are 3 things that you notice about yourself that are a sign that you're burned out? Also, how did you overcome that? Or how are you working through that if you're currently working through that? What are your steps? What are your self-care measures? And lastly, we have something special coming. So don't forget to put your country, state, hotel, cafe, whatever it is you want to experience, put it in the comments. We got something coming.